Hi guys, it's me Shazza HD and welcome to this full live race review of the 1000th Grand Prix in Formula 1 history, the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix. And what we're going to do is review absolutely everything that happened during the 56 laps that went down about 3 hours ago. So that's what we're going to do in this race review. And also, towards the end, I will do say a 20-minute Q&A with you guys at the very end. But yet we're going to review the Grand Prix right here, right now. Hopefully you guys are doing well after the race finished. Hopefully you've calmed down. And hopefully, no matter where you're watching in the world, you're doing well on what is, for me, now a Sunday afternoon. So great to see you guys here. And let's now get into this review of the Chinese Grand Prix of 2019. Now, if you don't know what the results are, let me now reveal to you what those results are for this 1000th Grand Prix. So Lewis Hamilton took his second win in 2019 from Valtteri Bottas second in another Mercedes 1-2. Vettel finished in third, Verstappen fourth, Leclerc fifth, Gasly sixth, Ricciardo seventh, Perez eighth, Kimi Raikkonen ninth, and Albon 10th from the very back of the grid and also the pit lane. That's where he started the Grand Prix from. And finishing outside the points, Romain Grosjean, Lance Stroll, Kevin Magnussen, Carlos Sainz, Antonio Giovinazzi, George Russell, Robert Kubica, and then retiring from the Grand Prix, Lando Norris, Danny Kvyat, and Nico Hülkenberg. So those are your results for the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix. But now let's go team by team and talk about how they all got on in the Grand Prix. And we'll start off with Mercedes, who had another great day at the office. A 1-2 in qualifying they had, and they had another 1-2 in the Grand Prix. But it wasn't the 1-2 that it was in qualifying because, of course, Valtteri Bottas started on pole. But at the start, Lewis Hamilton got ahead in a very important move for his Grand Prix, and then after that dominated the race from start to finish and is the clear and deserving winner. Nothing really spectacular went down in Hamilton's Grand Prix. He was just too fast in a car that was also too fast and was his usual almost perfect self. Didn't make any errors at all, and the car seemed to be handling just right for Lewis Hamilton's liking. And he took, again, his second win in 2019. And it's pretty safe to say that he's pretty happy with that result. And this is what he had to say at the end of the Grand Prix. He said, "It wasn't the most straightforward of race weekends, but to have a 1-2 together in the 1000th race is really special." By the way, the quotes that I will do in this review of the race, they are brief because they haven't come out with their official, press releases from the team. So these are basically from Twitter. I just want to let you guys know of that. But that's what Lewis said right after the Grand Prix finished. And these are the key stats after Lewis Hamilton's victory. So, of course, finished in P1. That is his 6th victory in Shanghai. He is by a mile the most successful driver at this track, and that is Mercedes' third straight 1-2 finish in 2019. They are dominating 2019 in terms of results. When it comes to pace, I don't think they're dominating pace-wise, but results-wise, you cannot doubt Mercedes are dominating Formula 1 right now, as they have done for quite a long time. But Lewis Hamilton will, of course, be very, very happy with that win, as he now goes to the top of the Drivers' World Championship ahead of this man, Valtteri Bottas, who finished in P2. The start of the race was really where he lost the win. Now, if he did get ahead into turn 1, or stay ahead into turn 1 rather, then he really could have won the Grand Prix, but because he fell behind and then Hamilton built quite a big lead to Bottas, there was nothing Valtteri could really do. He did respond a bit at the start of the second stint on the hard compound tyres, but there was just nothing that he could really do. Again, the start cost him, and Valtteri Bottas, believes that it was because of white paint on the start grid. If you go look at the pole position starting grid or starting position, there is a white line that goes right across the straight, and it's right in front of the grid slot. So he thinks that's what cost him at the start and gave him wheel spin. And this is what Bottas had to say after the Grand Prix. He said, "I got some wheel spin at the start. Sometimes it's just the small details." But then says it's early in the season, but things are still looking good. Indeed, things are looking good. And I don't think Bottas was bad or anything today. I just don't think he was as good as Lewis Hamilton. So there you go. Still a good day for Valtteri Bottas. And he is still looking in a good position in the World Championship. He's in second place behind his teammate and only 6 points behind Hamilton as well. So great there for Bottas. And of course, perfect weekend for this team. 1-2 in qualifying, 1-2 in the Grand Prix. And they are looking pretty formidable for the races coming up. I think Baku will not be as strong for them as this race has been, because I think Baku will suit Ferrari, not more so over Mercedes, but it will bring Ferrari closer and may even push Ferrari ever so slightly ahead. So I think Baku is going to be a tough Grand Prix and a tough fight, but with this team the way they are at the moment, would you bet against them getting another race win and even another 1-2 finish? I'm not sure I would. So looking great for that team. And for the Constructors' Championship, I know it's 3 races in, but they look as though they've pretty much already won the Constructors, because Ferrari and Red Bull right now just cannot really get near them. But next up is Ferrari, who I think they could have got a better result than 3rd and 5th. I think 3rd and 4th was the best result Ferrari could get today. But you have to say this weekend it has been a disappointment. And this weekend, like with many teams, it has showed where the Ferrari is struggling. Basically, the Ferrari car aerodynamically is not good enough. That's, in simple terms, the best way I can put it. Aerodynamically not good enough. When it comes to straight line speed, I think they're good. But when it comes to grip, especially in the slow corners where you do need a good aerodynamic car, they just don't have it. And that is going to be something that they won't be able to fix until the Spanish Grand Prix at the earliest, which is in, a month's time. So Ferrari going into Baku, not looking great on that end. But Ferrari, you have to say, disappointing weekend. Now, I just want to talk about, actually, no, I'll get onto it in a moment. I was going to say, let's get into the team orders thing, but I'll get into that in a moment when I go into Charles Leclerc. But for Vettel, I think Vettel did the best he could. The Ferrari car just isn't good enough right now or at this track. So I think Sebastian did the best he could. And there you go. Let's hear from Vettel after the end of the Grand Prix. And it's pretty simple. He says, "I'm happy to be on the podium, but Mercedes were just too quick right from the very start." And he's absolutely bang on. Mercedes, straight away, just very, very quick. Very, very quick. And way too quick for Ferrari. But let's get on to Charles Leclerc. Because I guess there has been some controversy when it comes to his Grand Prix, because plenty of people out there that I've seen are angry about the team orders situation that happened during the Grand Prix, where Charles Leclerc had to let Sebastian Vettel through during the first stint. Now, I've seen plenty of people say, oh, it's only 3 races in, let them race, all of that stuff. But looking at the situation, Sebastian Vettel was faster than Charles Leclerc. The reason he could not get past was because the dirty air, and yeah, well, pretty much it is because of the dirty air. That's why Sebastian Vettel could not get past Charles Leclerc, and he was being held up. Now, when Vettel passed Leclerc, he didn't exactly, pull away massively, and I understand people making that point, but he was faster than Charles Leclerc over the course of the Grand Prix. And I know, again, that Leclerc was on a different strategy to Sebastian Vettel, but still, he was faster. That's really it. Sebastian Vettel was faster. Now, you may say, well, drivers, they should be allowed to race within a team. When the reasoning is right, yes. But at Ferrari, they were not going to gain anything allowing those two to race in terms of the team result. And as I said, and as me and Nib actually said in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, we did a podcast about why the team is always more important than the drivers in response to the whole team orders thing between Vettel and Leclerc in Melbourne. The team is more important than the drivers because the results of the team are more so down to the people that aren't the drivers. The drivers are just there to give feedback as to where to improve the car and get the best out of the car. They don't build the car. They don't make the car go faster with upgrades. They don't design the car. The drivers are not more important than the team. And the team result mattered more, and it always will do. So Vettel had to be let through because he was being held up. And actually, if they did not swap positions, Max Verstappen probably would have jumped Vettel at the end, at the beginning of the second stint. So they had to do it. They absolutely had to do it. I understand why people don't like it, but that is the way Formula One is. If you don't like it, then don't watch. That's just the way Formula One is. You're not going to change that for Ferrari. If they were wrong with the team order that they gave, then I would have said and called it out that they were wrong, but they weren't. So for me, Ferrari were absolutely right when it came to applying the team orders. Charles Leclerc, he just wasn't quick today. He didn't have really any speed in that car. This track doesn't tend to be that good for him. I mean, last year he was terrible in the Sauber, spinning a couple times. So it's not a good track for Charles. And that's why he has ended up finishing in P5. But I just want to say for Ferrari, already because of the results of the first 3 races, Baku is now critical towards Ferrari's season. If Mercedes win in Baku, and especially get a 1-2, then I think Ferrari's title chances are almost over. I know that might sound ridiculous, but I honestly do think that, because if you go and look at the history of Formula One, I don't think there's been a season where another team has gone on to win the championship, or a driver for another team has gone on to win the championship, if one team has won the first 4 races. So, if Mercedes win in Baku, do Ferrari and Red Bull, in terms of the championship, have a chance? Mostly, probably not. So Baku, when it comes to the World Championship, is critical for Ferrari. If 2019 is going to be successful, they have to have the best race they've had in a long time in Baku. There can be no errors, and they cannot leave a stone unturned. They have to make sure that they get the win in Baku. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 1-2. If they do have the pace to comfortably get a 1-2, then by all means, make sure you do. But They have to win in Baku. Absolutely, categorically have to win. If they don't, then I think their championship bid is 75% over already. So Baku is Ferrari's most important race for quite a long time. But now let's go on to Red Bull, who I think basically today did the best they could. Max Verstappen finishing in P4. He got away fine, was in P5, and then he came out after his first stop, came out right behind Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari, went for the dive down the inside of the hairpin, did not get it right, and Vettel cut back underneath. So he missed out getting past Vettel there. But because Ferrari left Leclerc out, Verstappen jumped Leclerc, and then from then on, Verstappen had the edge when it came to Charles Leclerc for most of the rest of the Grand Prix, and finished in P4. And I think Max, I think he did the best he could, because I don't think the Red Bull car was quite quick enough in all the areas that it needed to be to finish in P3. But I will say, for Pierre Gasly, position wise, good, I think. Oh, not good, but you know, he did at least what was expected of him. P6, considering who was ahead of him in the Grand Prix. But pace wise, I'm sorry, it was not good enough. Now I know he got the fastest lap point, and that's all well and good, but he ended up finishing just over a minute behind Max Verstappen. Now, I know he took an extra pit stop, but still, he ended up... Well, if he didn't take that extra pit stop, he would have ended up, what, 40 seconds behind? And that's a loss per lap of about 3/4 of a second. That's not good enough for Pierre Gasly, pace-wise, and he has to improve massively when it comes to the pace of him in that Red Bull car, because if he doesn't, then he is really running the risk of being dropped. I think that is a possibility if he doesn't improve his speed. Baku is not going to be an easy Grand Prix for him, because again, he's lacking confidence and speed. And I don't think Red Bull are going to be that good in Baku. Honestly, I think Red Bull could be under threat from cars behind during the Azerbaijan Grand Prix weekend. So, Red Bull, performance-wise in Baku, I mean, they should finish, say, behind the top two teams. But I don't think they'll be, say, as close to the race winners as they were in Shanghai, which wasn't that close, but it was a bit closer than they were in Bahrain, I think, or in Australia. So, yeah, they're not going to be as close as they were in Shanghai, but they still should finish, say, if, say, the top 4 drivers in the top 2 teams finish the Grand Prix and don't have any issues, Red Bull should finish in P5 and P6, but I don't expect them in Baku to be that good, really, at all. But before I now go on to the midfield, guys, right now in the live chat and also the comment section, let me know, what did you think of the top 3 teams and how they performed for Mercedes? What do you think about them and how they dominated the race for Ferrari? What did you think about the team order situation? And do you think Baku for them is critical for their championship? And for Red Bull, what did you think about their race? Was it the best they could have got? Let me know right now in the live chat, and I'll respond to as many comments as I can for the next 5 minutes or so. And then we will move on to the midfield. But guys, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as the content you have seen this weekend I do for every race weekend, and I will be for every race weekend in 2019. So don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell, and also like this video as well. But I'll just quickly off mic clear my throat, and then I'll come back to reading your comments. Right. So now let's take a look at your comments and see what you guys have to say. So Sebastian says, told you Chazza, when Mercedes get a 1-2, the race is boring. Well, it's up to the other teams to make it less boring. Abby says, Red Bull getting a lot better though. Red Bull should be happy with today's results. I don't think they'll be happy, but they'll be satisfied with what happened. I think what they got from this race was probably what they were going to get anyway, or what they were expecting to get from the race. So there you go. Annette says, I understood but don't like the team orders, but I think keeping Leclerc out so long screwed Leclerc's chance of P4 or getting P4. Yeah, it probably did, but I think honestly after Max did that undercut, his chances of P4 weren't that great anyway. I mean, he only finished about 3 seconds behind Verstappen at the end of the Grand Prix, but I think Max just about over the course of the race had the edge on Charles Leclerc speed-wise. So I think Leclerc was really going to end up anyway in P5. Smooth Gaming, I think it is, says or asks, how do Ferrari go from having the best car in the first few races last year to being so bad this year? This is the thing, they're not bad, they're just not as good as Mercedes are. I mean, they were only, what, 0.3 of a second off in qualifying, which in Formula 1 is a bit, you know, quite a bit of time, but it's not massive. It's not like it was in Australia. And if you look at the results, this performance for Ferrari is nowhere near as bad as it was in Melbourne. Melbourne was a lot more bad than the performance this weekend, and especially today in Shanghai. Today in the Grand Prix, Ferrari were about a quarter of a second a lap slower than Mercedes, which is not, again, it's not massive, but in Formula 1 terms, that's still a gap that you don't want to be losing out on compared to other teams. So Ferrari don't have a bad car, it just needs to step up aerodynamically or grip-wise compared to their rivals, because they do have the power, but they just don't have the grip. That's where they're going wrong. Sebastian says Baku is critical for Ferrari. If they fail to win, they should focus on 2020 or 2021. I don't think they should, you know, shift focus that quickly, because you never know, maybe they could still get some race wins. I mean, let's not forget, Charles Leclerc was, what, 10 laps away from winning the Bahrain Grand Prix on pure speed, and because the Ferrari car was so quick. So it's not like, you know, Ferrari have been comfortably behind Mercedes for the first 3 races. They haven't. Ferrari were faster in Bahrain, but Mercedes have been faster in Melbourne and Shanghai. Now, if Ferrari in Baku, if Ferrari are faster, but this time actually get the result, then we know we are in for probably a good title fight. But that's why I say Baku is critical, because they have to go out there, 1, have the best car, 2, get the win that they should have got in Bahrain. And it doesn't matter which driver gets the win. Doesn't matter. Just get the win in Baku. They have to. Fraser McInnes says Leclerc faster than Vettel. Fact? No, it's not a fact this weekend, because Vettel outqualified Leclerc and Vettel was quicker over the course of the Grand Prix, so that's not correct. And also Sebastian makes the point, and it is true, Charles Leclerc is very good at Baku, and I think if a driver for Ferrari is going to win the Grand Prix, it's probably going to be Charles Leclerc, because he is very strong. Last year in the Sauber, finished in P6 and was fantastic. and was successful there in F2. So I think Charles Leclerc, if Ferrari have the best car, he will probably be leading that team in the fight for the race win. And the final comment before I go on to the midfield, and a very tight and exciting midfield we had in this race, I think. The final comment again goes to Sebastian. Baku Sector 3 should definitely help Ferrari, but Sector 2 will help Mercedes. Well, there's 3 sectors, of course. Yes, Sector 2 will help Mercedes and Sector 3 will help Ferrari, but Sector 1 will help Ferrari because it's all about power, is Sector 1. So Ferrari should be a lot better in Baku. If the gap is the same and Mercedes is still out front, then Ferrari probably need to start panicking a bit, because they really should be. If they're not on pole or winning the Grand Prix, they should be very close in terms of lap time. So hopefully they are, because I want to see, a fight for the race win between different teams, like we all do. But also, I want to see a proper title fight between 2 separate teams and 2 drivers, or maybe even 3 drivers. So let's hope that we get that. But now let's go on to the midfield and start off with Renault, who had a great Grand Prix as Daniel Ricciardo finished in P7 and did the best he could with what he has. The Renault car this weekend was the best car in the midfield, and he really just comfortably drove into that finishing position. He wasn't miles ahead though of other cars. For example, he had to hold off Perez and Raikkonen at the end of the Grand Prix. But I think Ricciardo did the best he could. I think Renault, with at least Ricciardo, did the best they could in terms of the result. And Renault now return to P4 in the Constructors, of course, where they finished in 2018. So good for them. But the only thing that is negative, and I'm sorry it's not good enough, is the retirement of Nico Hülkenberg, because he had basically a completely new car when it came to, the power unit, turbo, the MGU-K, the MGU-H, everything. And he retired after 18 laps. Now, we don't know the exact issue, but let's be honest, it's probably something to do with the Renault power unit, because that's the way Renault just are. So, very, very disappointing for Hülkenberg, and I'm sorry, nowhere near good enough for them to be having that issue, a quarter of the way into the Grand Prix when he's had a completely new car, really, made for this weekend. So, terrible reliability for Renault, and that will affect them this year for sure if that continues. So hopefully it does not. But for Ricciardo, good day. I think mostly for Renault, but for Baku, they're in for a tough Grand Prix, because I don't think they'll have the best car in the midfield there, and I think they're really gonna struggle to get both cars in the points. I think if they do get in the points, it'll be with one car. I don't think it'll be with both. And they're going to be under threat, I think, quite a bit from Haas, Alfa Romeo, Racing Point for sure. Racing Point tend to have their best, Grand Prix of the season at Baku. So I think Racing Point will be very competitive. Maybe Toro Rosso, who knows? So Renault aren't in for a great weekend in Baku, I think, but they can still end up with a points finish, no doubt about that. Next up is McLaren, who have had an absolutely horrible weekend. This is very reminiscent of the end of last year, where they had no speed and were having just terrible things happen to them. This is hopefully a one-off, and I think it probably will be going forward into Baku and then Spain and Monaco. But speed-wise, and with what happened at the start, it has been, quite frankly, a disaster. for McLaren, and that is, of course, not good, because after Bahrain, you thought, maybe this team does have a chance of P4 on the constructors, or even finishing in the top 5. But after this Grand Prix, you now doubt that. So hopefully they get their act together for the next race in Baku. I think they will. I don't think they'll be massively better if they are better. But if they're going to make a difference in that midfield, they've got to respond immediately to what has been a very forgettable weekend for McLaren. Next up is Alfa Romeo. Kimi Räikkönen, great performance, and for me, one of the drivers of the day. He wasn't my driver of the day, absolutely, but I'd say is second when it comes to that. Because, started 13th, had a okay start, and then started overtaking people in just a classic Kimi Räikkönen way. Got past the 2 Haas cars. I think twice he passed both Magnussen and Grosjean respectively. He also passed, who did he pass? Nico Hülkenberg in the first stint. Very good overtake. And was, pace-wise, very, very strong. And I think Kimi was one of the best midfield drivers out there today, if not the best driver in the midfield. He was very, very quick. And if he had a better qualifying, Kimi Räikkönen could have finished at the front of the midfield. But I will say, his result, I think, is a very, very good one, and a great, little 2 points for the Alfa Romeo team, because now they are still technically 4th in the constructors. They're joint 4th with Renault on 12 points, so they're still looking good, Alfa Romeo, and I think they are set up for a good season. They just need 2 good drivers in that car instead of 1. And talking of Giovinazzi, terrible. Absolutely terrible. Did nothing positive today. Was dead slow. He's been dead slow all weekend and has to step it up. If he continues like this in Baku, then he's another driver that should be possibly dropped, say, by the time we get to Canada and France. So, yeah, Giovinazzi has to step it up, because he has been absolutely shocking this weekend. And I don't think this season, or really in his Formula One career so far, I don't think he has done one positive thing so far. So, please, Antonio, do something positive. But a positive weekend for Alfa, and a good 2 points to take away from this weekend. And I think they'll be very happy with that once we get into the later races. And I think those 2 points extra may be very, very important once we get to the later stages of the season, where I'm expecting Alfa to really be strong in the fight for 4th in the constructors with Renault and also Haas. Talking of Haas, let's go on to them now. And they had the Grand Prix that we thought they would have. They started P9 and P10, but because they have bad tyre wear, they just can't do anything when it comes to race performance. And actually, Romain Grosjean came out and I think brilliantly summed up the issues they do have. He basically said that, qualifying were normally great, but after 2 or 3 laps in the first stint of a Grand Prix, we have no grip and we can't really compete. And that's exactly what happened again, because obviously they started on the soft compound tyres and then got passed by Raikkonen. And then, Magnussen was falling down the field as well, past Toro Rosso and drivers like that. And ended up being very early in terms of when they made their pit stops, and ended up finishing in P11 and P13. Kevin Magnussen was passed on the final lap by Lance Stroll, I think into the hairpin. And Grosjean just missed out on passing Albon he didn't have the pace, I'm afraid, to beat Albon during the Grand Prix, and I don't think Haas deserved to score a point. And you have to say, this has been, even though it hasn't been a good weekend for Haas, it's not been a surprisingly bad weekend for them. We kind of expected this. I probably would have bet on this result happening if you told me this was likely to happen. You know, finish 9th and 10th in qualifying and then 11th and 13th in the Grand Prix. It was kind of expected. And I think Haas need to kind of change that because, look, qualifying speed, Haas are great when it comes to that. But race pace, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And they cannot afford to keep being that bad when it comes to race pace. So they've got to improve that going forward. Will they be good in Baku? I don't know. They'll have the power to be good. But if you look at last year, for example, Haas were terrible. So I think they'll get one car into, say, the top 10 in qualifying and then one maybe outside. But for the race, I don't know. I think they're going to struggle really bad in the Grand Prix. I think they're going to struggle, especially against, you know, Racing Point, Renault, Alfa Romeo, teams like that. So not looking good for Haas after the first race of the season where they looked fantastic. So they've got to improve Haas very, very quickly. Next up is Toro Rosso. Toro Rosso, good race in terms of the result, but it wasn't the cleanest Grand Prix. Danny Kvyat, of course, had his start line crash with the two McLarens. Now, I am going to analyse that in a video that's going to come out tomorrow. I'll talk about that more later on in this video. But yeah, Kvyat involved in the crash at the start, and really after that had his race compromised by a drive-through penalty, which, by the way, even if it is Kvyat's fault, that drive-through was way too harsh. We've seen a lot worse on the first lap than that, and the driver has only had, say, a 5-second penalty or only a warning. So that's way too harsh for me. A drive-through penalty, way too harsh. I think the reason they gave that, I'm going to be honest, is because of his reputation. Because he is the torpedo, they gave him that penalty. I honestly think that. So there you go. And then continuing the Grand Prix, wasn't that quick, was swimming around in, say, 12th and 13th, and then eventually retired with some kind of technical issue. But driver of the day absolutely is Alexander Albon, who of course started from the pit lane after that massive crash in practice 3, which meant he missed out in qualifying. Started from the pit lane in last place and finished in the points in P10, just about holding off Romain Grosjean. He made plenty of overtakes in the first laps, passing the Williams and then passing Giovinazzi, passing his teammate. And I think also passed Kevin Magnussen before the first pit stops started. And then after that, just continued his raw pace. Also jumped Lance Stroll in the first pit stop phase, and that got him ahead of him, which was very, very important. But yeah, Albon, I think, was just so good today and fully deserves to finish in the points. Yes, he made a bad error that meant he missed out on qualifying, but I think has instantly redeemed himself after this performance. So great by Albon, and hopefully he can build on that for Baku, where he does have a very nice experience at that track, and should go well there, because I think last year in Formula 2 he actually won one of the races. So Alexander Albon is one to watch out for in Baku. But Toro Rosso pace-wise, I think if Kvyat did not have his crash, I think Kvyat, and also, didn't have his retirement, I think Kvyat could have also finished in the points. I think Toro Rosso had probably the 5th or 6th fastest car. But there you go, finishing 10th. But still, a points finish for Toro Rosso. And I think it's a good points finish for this team. Next up is Racing Point, who was surprisingly very quick in the Grand Prix. Also, I want to give very big shout out to Sergio Perez for the great start he had, going from P12 to P8 and then staying there for the whole of the Grand Prix, and also almost beating Daniel Ricciardo today, which was a bit surprising because the Renault aerodynamically is a lot stronger than the Racing Point right now. So it's very impressive to see the Racing Point so good. And Perez, I've even seen has come out and said that this result is especially good considering that they weren't expecting to be that good this weekend. And I was not expecting them to be that good, but they were great in the Grand Prix, and in qualifying weren't too bad either. So great for Racing Point. Lance Stroll, I think a good race performance, but I think it's become pretty clear for him. And I think it really shows where Stroll is really just not performing, and it all comes down to qualifying. If Lance Stroll was a better qualifying driver, he would get more points finishes. But he doesn't because he can't get qualifying right. And he has to improve that area of his game if he wants to be competing with Sergio Perez, because you have to say, you know, take away Melbourne, and he has been comfortably behind his teammate in Bahrain and Shanghai. So, got to step up his one-lap pace, because if he doesn't, then even if he does get points, if Perez finishes the race, then he will always be behind Sergio Perez. So he has to improve that area. Hopefully he does. But great for Racing Point. 8th place, 4 points, and a great day for that team. And next up is Baku. And Baku, historically, is probably their best track on the calendar. So expect them to be very strong. Also, Stroll is very strong at that track. So is Sergio Perez, as Perez has 2 podiums at Baku, and could have had a podium, if not a race win, in 2017 if Ocon did not take him out, who was, of course, his teammate at the time. So I think they're going to be very strong in Baku for sure. And last of all, of course, is Williams. They weren't actually doing that bad in the Grand Prix for a bit, but I will say, I think George Russell deserves a shout out. He was very good today, very quick. It was only half a minute behind Antonio Giovinazzi, I think, at the end. So, a good performance by Russell, but again, for Williams, just not good enough. But guys, right now in the live chat and the comment section, let me know what you thought of the midfield teams and how they performed for, Renault, McLaren, Alfa, Haas, Toro Rosso, and Racing Point. Let me know what you think. And yeah, comment right now, either in the comment section or the live chat. And for the next 5 minutes or so, I will read out your comments, and then we'll go on to the Q&A, and I'll do that for, say, 15 to 20 minutes. But again, guys, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as I do this content for, and I will be doing it for, every race weekend in 2019. So don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell for that video, or for those videos rather, coming up for the rest of 2019. But again, I'll just quickly clear my throat, and then I'll be back to reading your comments in the live chat. So yeah, let's read some comments from you guys. Motorsport Tube says, at the time, I've got to be honest, I thought it was Kvyat's fault. This is in reference, of course, to the crash. Because I thought he oversteered into the McLaren, but I will have to analyse it in more detail to come up with a fair judgment. Yeah. If you go back and look, everything happens so quickly. You need to look at it frame by frame. And I'm not 100% sure that Danny Kvyat caused that crash to happen. But even if he did, it was not deserving of a drive-through penalty. Not at all. Nowhere near a drive-through penalty. Sebastian says Perez is great, should be in a Ferrari car right now or in the future. I think that seat or that chance has passed, not because he has wasted a chance or is not good enough, but there's just too many good drivers out there, and I don't think Ferrari will go for someone like Sergio Perez. Motorsport Tube also says we didn't see very much of Ricciardo. It's because he was so solid in P7. That's why. There you go. Razor McInnes says, yeah, Albon and Kimi were probably best today in the midfield, and Russell did good. I think in the driver of the day, listing, I'd probably go Albon first, Kimi Raikkonen second, Lewis Hamilton third, and then probably Sergio Perez in fourth. That's probably what my top 4 for the driver of the day listing would be. But let me read out, say, a couple more comments, and then I will move on to the Q&A, where you guys can go ahead and start asking some questions for say 15 to 20 minutes. Motorsport Tube again says, I thought Grosjean was decent too, considering the tyre issues. I thought Grosjean did the best he could, and I think K-Mag also did the best he could, but the car just is not a good race car. It's as simple as that. Maybe the drivers could adapt their race driving style to save the tyres, but you can't afford to do that. You can't afford to do that. Let me find one more comment, and then we'll go on to the Q&A. Just trying to find a final comment. Addiction says Ricciardo had a loss of power, and that he heard that from Sky Sports. Well, did pretty well if he did have that issue. Did pretty well to still finish in 7th, but also points to Renault still having ridiculously bad reliability issues, which they have to fix. They have to fix because it's not good enough at all. Also, and you know what? I'm going to include it as my first question in the Q&A. So yeah, Q&A time, guys. Go ahead and ask your questions for the next 15 to 20 minutes. The first one, though, is from Motorsport Tube, who asks, should Ericsson return to Alpha? If Giovinazzi gets dropped early on, then I would put Ericsson back in that car because, well, for one, he is, I think, the reserve driver, but also I think he deserved to be on the grid for 2019. The reason Giovinazzi's in that car is because of the Ferrari influence and because they want a Ferrari Driver Academy driver in that car. But if he's not good enough, then they're going to have to drop him pretty soon. So, yeah, I think if he does get replaced, it'll probably be by Marcus Ericsson. It won't be by Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher has not proven that he's ready for Formula 1. So it won't be him. It won't be, Callum Ilott, who, again, like Mick Schumacher, has not proven that he's ready for Formula 1. So, yeah, if he gets dropped before the season finishes, it will be Marcus Ericsson for sure. And I think Raikkonen and Ericsson would be a great lineup, and I think they'd have a better chance at finishing P4 on the Constructors if they had that lineup and not the lineup that they do have. But there you go. Ace Race asks, should Leclerc move to another team? No, come on. That's ridiculous. He shouldn't move to another team. It's one bad race. F1 has a bad race. I mean, Leclerc had a bad weekend in Melbourne, but look what he did one race after. So, let's not get too over the top. He shouldn't move to another team. He is that team's future. If he performs how we think he can, he will be a better driver than Sebastian Vettel for the next, 2 years, I think. Um, Whether he is all time better than Sebastian Vettel, we'll have to see. But he should be. I honestly think he should be better than Vettel in the next couple of years, because I think the kid is that good. And if he does really get in a good run of form with that team and the Ferrari car can improve, then I think Charles Leclerc could really stamp his authority on Formula One and maybe become a title contender. Maybe for 2019, but I think more so for 2020. I've said this plenty of times. Charles Leclerc is a lot more... His chances of a title challenge are a lot better in 2020 than they are in 2019, because in 2020 he'll have, a year under his belt at Ferrari. The Ferrari car should, with the new 2019 regulations after once we get into 2020, the aerodynamic regulations would have been settled, so Ferrari should be improving by then. He'll be more experienced, more confident, probably quicker or on a more consistent basis. And yeah, I think we'll be a lot better in 2020 than 2019. I think 2019 he will win races and will have definitely a string of good performances, but I think 2020, because he'll be more experienced and because the Ferrari car should, improve, I think he'll be better then. So he shouldn't leave Ferrari at all. He'd be a bit of an idiot to leave Ferrari, honestly. Sebastian asks, who do you think will be better at Baku, Leclerc or Vettel? It will be Charles Leclerc, because Leclerc has always been great at that track. Fraser McInnes, do you think Kubica will still be racing in F1 next year? I don't know. That's a 50-50. Ask me that again around Silverstone, and I think I'll probably be able to give you an answer to that. But right now I can't, because we haven't had enough races. Sebastian asks, do you think Alonso will come back to F1? I'm going to say 70% no, 30% yes. I think if the right car becomes available, yes. Which team would he join? I don't know. I mean, the most likely would be McLaren, but you never know. He could go back to Renault if Renault decide to put him in their car, but I don't think that's likely. But if he does come back to F1, it's most likely going to be McLaren, because he has a contract with McLaren, and they seem to have a good relationship at the moment. Motorsport Tube asks, should Ferrari focus on 2020? Again, like I said earlier, no, they should not. Because we're 3 races into 2019, and if they win in Baku and really stamp their authority on 2019 from that race on, then they're in the championship fight. So what's the point of focusing on 2020? If Ferrari are still losing to Mercedes in the way they are now, say Austria Silverstone time, if it continues until then yeah, they should focus on 2020, because they're not gonna come away with a result in the championships which are good enough. So if it's still going on like this until Austria Silverstone time, then yeah, focus on 2020. But it's too early to say that. It's too early to start focusing on 2020. The only team that should be focusing on 2020 is Williams, for obvious reasons. Blackfar508 asks, what did you think of the poor television directing? Hardly any midfield battles shown. The FOM directing was so crap. So crap. They the camera work was very shoddy. The cuts to different cameras was terrible. They were showing the wrong people at the wrong time. We weren't getting the information we needed. It was terrible. That was one of the worst broadcasts that FOM have done, probably in their history. And I hope some of you guys have, got onto them on Twitter and said, why were you so bad today with your directing of the show? Because it was terrible. If you're a new F1 or a new person to F1 and you watch that race, you'd think, what is this TV production? It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. And it was. Today. That's not normally how they are, by the way, if you are new to Formula One. That's not normally how they are. They do have some races where they're not quite, say, awake at times, but most of the time they are pretty good at what they do. So hopefully it's only a one-off. Maybe they were nervous because it was the 1000th Grand Prix and they wanted to put on a good show. Maybe that's why. But the directing from start to finish was just god-awful, honestly. Right, let's read some more questions out. Fraser McInnes, do you think Max will join Mercedes for 2021? Only if Red Bull are still not competitive enough for a World Championship bid and if Lewis Hamilton retires. Then yes. Ace Ray, do you think, he asks rather, do you think Liberty should allow full races on YouTube? Yeah, but they're never going to do it. They're never going to do it because they want you to pay for it. So there you go. That's why we have pay TV, because they want you to pay for it even though it's not really worth the money you pay for it. Especially what I pay for Sky Sports F1. It's ridiculous the amount of money I pay for Sky Sports F1 or Sky Sports in general, when the Formula One races in the last year or so, they've been good, but they've not been worth the money that, I've been paying or other people have been paying. So, yeah. It's a thing that, yeah, they should do, but they're not going to because money talks. Let me just look at some more comments. Sebastian asks, who does the 2021 rules help? Well, I think you kind of answered your own question at the end there by saying this might be a dumb question. I'm not going to say it's dumb, but I think you know what I mean. We can't say at all. Pedro Goldfinger says, agreed, the camera work sucked. They are mostly bad, I think. Yeah, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. Ultraman asks, why Facebook and Instagram not working at all? I don't know what you're on about. If you want to clarify what you're talking about, then make sure to go ahead and do so. Fraser McInnes, who's impressed you most in the midfield so far? In terms of team, I would say either Alfa Romeo or Toro Rosso. I'm probably going to say Alfa. And to be honest, if you look at the drivers that are driving for midfield teams, not necessarily drivers that are midfield drivers, but out of drivers that are driving midfield cars, I think Kimi Raikkonen has been the best driver from the midfield teams in 2019. And I'm going to be honest, I think Kimi Raikkonen has been one of the top 5 drivers in 2019 so far. I think Kimi's been great. He hasn't put a foot wrong. Been fantastic. And I think if Kimi was still in Ferrari, or still at Ferrari rather, I think Kimi Raikkonen would probably be still contending for podiums, if not finishing on the podium. He is still that good, is Kimi Raikkonen. Motorsport Tube, the cameramen need to film the cars and nothing else. Exactly. Sebastian asks, who will be strong in Barcelona? Just wondering, because that will be my first F1 race I'm going to. This is the thing, because teams bring upgrades to the Grand Prix, they bring the biggest upgrade they bring to the Grand Prix that they do for the whole season. I can't really say. If you would ask me now, I'd say Mercedes, because You need good grip at that track to have a good weekend, but Ferrari might improve. So I don't know for sure, but if the Spanish Grand Prix was tomorrow, Mercedes would win for sure, because their grip is superior to Ferrari. And the final question for the Q&A goes to Motorsport Tube, who asks, would Vettel do better than Raikkonen at Alfa Romeo? Pace-wise, yes. But whether he would get the results, I don't know. Pace-wise, again, I think Sebastian would be faster. But we've seen this with Sebastian. He doesn't necessarily get the results that you need with the speed that he does have at times. So I don't know if I can say for sure that he would be doing better than Kimi at Alfa Romeo. Let me just find. Is there one more question? Yeah, there is from Toka Toy Truck. I'll read out that one as the final one because this is a good one as well. Is Racing Point going to make a comeback? Yes, Racing Point will improve as the season goes on for sure, because the increased money from the Stroll family will improve them as the season goes on, like it did with Sauber last year, as they continuously rose through the field. But guys, that is the end of the race review and almost the end of all of the content for the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix. There is one more video left, and that will come out tomorrow at 2 PM UK time, where I'll be analysing a couple incidents from the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix, and those incidents will be the start crash between Kvyat, Norris and Sainz, and also the battling for position between Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen. So make sure to come along and watch that at 2 PM UK time tomorrow on Monday afternoon. And in regards to content, next week, I mean, you have that tomorrow. On Saturday, next Saturday, we will be live for an Azerbaijan Grand Prix preview on Saturday at 3 PM UK time. So make sure to come along to that and subscribe and hit the notifications bell for that. Saturday, 3 PM UK time, Azerbaijan Grand Prix preview. And that is what is guaranteed to be coming out next week, is, tomorrow's incident analysis of the podcast. I am looking to upload a video about Pierre Gasly at Red Bull. Whether I'll get it out next week, I don't know for sure. I'll try to, but if I can't, then I can't. But the guaranteed content is incident analysis and also the podcast on Saturday. So make sure to come along to that and also subscribe and hit the notifications bell for that content. But I just want to say, guys, again, thank you for the viewership and the support this weekend as usual. And yet, I can't wait to do this again in Baku in a fortnight's time. But also, don't forget to like this video and comment down below what you thought of this video and what did you think of the Grand Prix in Shanghai, and how the teams did, how the drivers did, who performed well, who did not. Let me know right now in the comment section. And after the video, of course, or the stream has finished. Also, don't forget to join the Discord server. That's the best place for notifications for my videos. And also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110. And follow, or check out rather, my website, chazahd.com, for more content like this. But guys, until the next video, which will be tomorrow at 2 PM UK time, analysing incidents from the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix, until the next live stream, which will be probably Saturday for the podcast, the 2019 Azerbaijan Grand Prix preview, and until the next race in a fortnight's time, which will be the 2019 Azerbaijan Grand Prix from Baku, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.